Lori St. John. You're absolutely going to love Lori. She is such an amazing woman, and she shares with us her story of what one woman can do to create massive change in society, in our legal system. Lori championed the cause of an innocent man on death row, and she galvanized the Italian and European parliaments, Pope John Paul II, Mother Teresa, as well as Sister Helen Prejean, the author of Dead Man Walking. She just completed her book, The Corruption of Innocence, it's really a breathtaking story, and she has published it. She will be speaking about her story. She will share her story with the world, detailing what she did. And this is an unprecedented case of injustice that was instrumental in a variety of changes in the legal, religious, and social landscape of the world, as solidarity crept to the steps of the United States Supreme Court for justice denied. This is really a very, very powerful story and a very powerful woman. So welcome, Lori.
Oh, thank you for having me, Marbeth. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, I didn't even talk about how you are now an attorney, that you have a background as a CPA. Well, you can fill in and share with our listeners all about your story, because it's such an amazing, amazing experience that you've shared with me and now with the public in your book. So how did all this come about?
Well, I was married to a surgeon, and I was a certified public accountant with my own practice at some time in the state of New Jersey. And I felt there was something missing in my life, and I wanted to reach out and give something back to society. And so I was sitting in a cafe sometime in Princeton after having a tennis lesson and having a cup of tea with some friends of mine. And I saw in the newspaper an article about people wrongly convicted of crimes. And I thought, wow, what could be worse than being imprisoned for something you didn't do? And it just so happened that this organization was situated right there in the middle of Princeton, right across the street from the Ivy League school of Princeton University. So I stormed into the office and, maybe a day or two later, and I volunteered my time. And lo and behold, they accepted it. And I had no idea what I was about to embark upon. But that's how I began my journey for justice for this individual.
So this was quite a story. You worked with him for how many years?
For almost 4 years. This was my life, day in and day out. For almost 4 years solid, I worked this case through investigative measures.
Wow. Well, I know you had a CPA background, but then you also went to law school.
Yes, at the time that I did this, though, I was not an attorney. And I think that's instrumental in how this came to be. Attorneys, when you're educated, are a little bit more reserved in how they approach things. There are certain protocols that are adhered to. And so actually, Marbeth, it was beautiful that I was not a lawyer. I was a CPA, and I was looking to do something greater, to find my purpose, to find my mission. And in fact, that's exactly what I did. I did go to law school as a result of this because I was very interested in and then pursuing this area. So I did become the founder and the director of the Innocence Project at the Rutgers School of Law. But in large part, for the first year and a half of this case, I was just a regular citizen who then went to law school. And then in the midst of my second year, in the beginning of my second year, first week in, when we found out that there were exigent circumstances, I took a leave of absence. So this literally was my life for almost 4 years.
So this man was wrongfully accused. You discovered quite a bit of wrongdoing in terms of just about every aspect of the justice system. Can you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. I found, at the time, my father was an assistant attorney general for the state of Connecticut, and I had thought, being raised in a family like that, relatively conservative, I thought the system worked. And I had no reason, nor did I care about why it wouldn't work until I was confronted with this, smack right in front of my face as I was reading about his case. I read a transcript that was over 15,000 pages with numerous investigative reports, psychiatric reports, post conviction motions, you name it. And I grabbed hold of it and read with intensity, because my mission was to find out, was this man guilty or innocent of the crime that he was convicted of? And in large part, as I started getting into the investigation, I brought on Richard Reyna, who was an investigator in the Timothy McVeigh case. And I assembled quite a team of experts, including Michael Bodden, who worked on the O.J. Simpson case, Barry Scheck, and of course, Sister Helen Prejean, author of Dead Men Walking. And the purpose was to find out the truth. And as I started investigating the case, I was shocked to find out that the legal system did not work as I thought it worked. And in fact, there were things that I read about that I was quite frankly shocked about, including suppression of evidence, lies, misstatement of facts, intimidation of witnesses. I mean, these things I thought only happened in the movies, but in fact, the reality is they happen in real life. So it did then become my mission and my passion to do everything that I possibly can to give a voice to someone that didn't have a voice.
So how did you get the Italian Parliament and the Pope involved with this?
Well, of course, an individual that's fighting the government will be presented with all sorts of challenges and all sorts of criticism and opposition. And so, not surprisingly, because I had uncovered intimidation of witnesses, I then became one of those witnesses. And so the prosecutor, threatened to sue me. And then the large step that he took, which only I guess made me stronger in my fierce determination to get this out, was that he also threatened to sue the newspaper that was about to expose the truth in this case in a front page and 3-page article detailing everything that I had uncovered. And when that happened, I realized, in watching the way that they were politically maneuvering and positioning themselves to get the facts out of this, facts in this case to the public, and in not doing so with integrity, I thought, my goodness, you can stop me in the United States, but you will not stop me in the world. And I am going to take this to the world. So I reached out to foreign sources, and I got a journalist in Italy that printed my story. It landed front page on the largest newspaper in Italy. And soon thereafter, it became quite a buzz in Italy. And I received a call from the Italian Parliament, and they wanted to talk to me, and they invited me to Italy. And they then championed my cause and created the national campaign to free Joseph O'Dell. And it became quite an international situation, which then, included the European Parliament. And as you said earlier, the Vatican became involved with Pope John Paul requesting intervention and reaching out to the president of our country at the time, and the governor. And then, of course, Mother Teresa getting involved at the very end as well, asking for the same thing.
So powerful. And you even married Joe O'Dell. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. This is the movie part, I think. Yes, I did. I was so convinced and so outraged by what I saw, so convinced that there was a way that I could make change in the United States with regard to the death penalty. The only way to do that, if they were then going to deny this person DNA testing, which is what we wanted to do to find out whether he was guilty or innocent, they denied the DNA testing. And the only way to be able to effectuate change was to then be able to prove that they executed an innocent man. And the only way that could have been accomplished is by me gaining access to the body, so that I could then make a claim to the court system, as a family member, to get the evidence and potentially do DNA testing afterwards to prove we had executed an innocent man. It was also my way to then get control of his body, because in the event that he would be executed, the Italian Parliament wanted his body in Palermo, Italy, where he was made an honorary citizen. And it was Joe Odell's wish to be buried in Italy should he not prevail in his quest for release and proving his innocence in the United States. So it was very strategically planned with the Roman Catholic diocese, who was petitioning at the same time to get the evidence. We were doing everything and anything we can. In cases like this, Marbeth, there is no stopping someone. You have to become creative and doing whatever it takes to reach your goal.
I know. You are just such an inspiration to me, Lori, I have to say. So what was the result of the DNA testing?
Well, they never allowed us to do full DNA testing. The DNA testing that we did have was definitive in that the blood that they said was the victim's blood was not the victim's blood. So we proved that the blood that they told the jury belonged to the victim was not hers. We had always surmised that, in fact, he was seen in a fight across town, that in fact it was the blood from one of the people that he fought with across town. So that's the only testing we were able to do. As a result of this, they did not give us the DNA testing, the evidence. I got the evidence, but they did not give me the sperm evidence, which would have given us definitive results. So, in a highly advanced society where we're able to do these things now, back then you have to realize this was relatively new. Joe Odell was the very first person to ask for DNA testing to prove his innocence back in 1986. This was absolutely unheard of. As a matter of fact, DNA testing was just being used to start to convict the guilty. So he had definite intuition with regard to what it could be used for as a tool. And as a matter of fact, this case had highlighted the importance of using DNA testing around the country to effectuate change and hopefully get justice for those people. Unfortunately, now we have over 306 people that have been exonerated, in large part because of DNA testing. They have been wrongly convicted for much the same reasons why Odell was: intimidation of witnesses, junk science, false confessions, you name it. So, the reasons why this case came to fruition back then has not changed 15 years later. Therefore, the importance of this book to hopefully effectuate change in the system, to now hold prosecutors liable and accountable for misconduct, which is something this country has never seen, but for a recent landmark case in the state of Texas where Michael Norton, he was an individual who was wrongly convicted and spent 25 years in prison. His prosecutor, who is now a judge, was just found guilty of criminal charges and withholding evidence, very similar to what happened in the Joe Odell case. So my book, The Corruption of Innocence, outlines exactly how this happens in cases of wrongful conviction, but more importantly, not just cases of wrongful conviction, in the judicial system, just plain out. Unfortunately, the people in the system have a lot of power, and unless we ask for accountability for people with power, then there's no need for them to be integral in how they handle cases. And I think the public needs to know, and my case will highlight exactly what happens behind closed doors and what kind of political corruption does happen that in large part the public generally does not see.
I can't even understand how people could be motivated to falsify evidence. What possible benefit could they have?
I'm not sure that it's necessarily falsifying evidence. I think what it is, it's withholding evidence, which I it's a matter of words. And, remember, I'm an attorney. But this happens mostly because once the prosecutor or the police officers have their man, they don't look back. They don't look at other avenues. They look at what might support their conviction. And anything that challenges the conviction, they either sweep under the carpet, they don't, share. And I'm not saying this happens across the board, and largely I'm sure there are many prosecutors out there that are fabulous, and I fully support that system. But I will say that there's enough of them that are not. There are enough of them that do lack integrity. There's enough of them that don't do what we, the citizens, expect of them. And it's those are the people that I think we need to call to accountability. So the fact that they don't want to admit a mistake, to me, is troubling, because we're speaking about someone's life. And a day in prison is too much, but we're talking about people that have spent 15, 20, 25, 30 years of their life in prison for something they did not do. I'm sorry, but to me, that is the most egregious form of justice that there is.
I understand that. And so the work that you did with Joe O'Dell and becoming an attorney and documenting everything about this case is very relevant to what's going on today in our justice system.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, just now, the Innocence Project in New York is calling upon everyone for a petition, because in Mississippi, they want to execute a man without doing DNA testing. And it's deja vu all over again. I cannot believe that nowadays, in 2013, where we have the capability for advanced science and to take advantage of testing that would definitively show whether someone was guilty or not, that we're not doing that. Far too often, I see that these things are also politically motivated, where in my particular case, in the Corruption of Innocence, you will see in reading the book that the prosecutor was up for judgeship nomination. The governor at the time was planning on running for Senate, and he did afterwards. So their political motivations would not exactly let them admit that they made a mistake. It would have, really hindered their popularity in the public view. So it absolutely is very critical to today, more important now, I think, than it ever was, because my story, The Corruption of Innocence, outlines for the average person who has no reason to know or could possibly know, from an insider's perspective, which is me at the time, who was as close as you could possibly get to the system, exactly what happens behind closed doors. And that type of political maneuvering, that type of thing that we don't see, that we're not privy to as the public, I think belongs in the public view, in the public eye. And that's the reason why I wrote the book, was to, help educate the public as to what happens and help to shed light on what truly happened in the Joseph O'Dell wrongful conviction, so that the media, so that the journalists, investigators, and people can learn from this story and help prevent further and future miscarriages of justice.
So what can we learn from you, from your experience? How would this relate to the law of attraction?
Oh, quite strongly, I believe. During something like this, Marbeth, it's something that when you're thrown in a position like this, or a situation like this, it is not just simply about you as an individual. If you let go of your fears or your views of authority, and if you stand true to who you are, and if you're determined, and if you're focused, you might stand alone in the beginning in your journey, but in the end, the universe will bring you the tools that you need in order to accomplish your goal. And so those tools might come in the form of, in my instance, Sister Helen Prejean, who initially helped me. It might come in the form of a parliament, Italian parliament. Now, these are extraordinary examples of what might happen, but my story is indicative of the importance of unwavering determination and belief in yourself, such that it doesn't matter what the opposition, what challenges stand in your way. It doesn't matter what criticism comes your way. If you know that you have strength in your belief, and you are authentic to your heart, and you believe in what you're doing, and you know the facts, then you stand strong. And when you stand strong, the universe will bring you what you need to accomplish your goals and your mission in life. And that is the only way to live, in my opinion.
It's a very powerful way to live, and I know because I know you personally. I'm very proud to call you one of my friends. It's just something that is so powerful. You just illustrate this power. And as a woman, I think it's just so wonderful that you're standing here as an example of a woman who trusted her heart and trusted what was right and went forward against impossible odds. And even though you were not able to save the life of Joe Odell, you have compiled in extreme detail. I know you have detailed everything in your book, and you have backed it up with everything that you could to verify what you're saying. So I would love to hear you talk a little bit more about the book now.
Okay. The book actually is a narrative nonfiction in the first person. And so I literally take the reader on my journey with me. I'm completely open and share my feelings, my emotions, the challenges. I share my strategies. I think that's one of the most important things that I'm really trying to educate people about. And that is, how to go about doing something like what I did, and how, in staying true to yourself, what might happen, and more importantly, how to overcome those obstacles. How that even though you might be tired and you might become exhausted physically, emotionally, spiritually, that doesn't matter. Something then suddenly rises within you to fight. So my book, The Corruption of Innocence, takes you through my reading of the transcripts, my investigation, which literally took me to the streets of West Virginia, to the crime scene, where, I was brought face to face with the jailhouse snitch, who, said Joseph Odell confessed to this crime, face to face with the alibi witness. And so I literally became an investigator. And so I take the reader on my journey through the mountains of West Virginia, through these interviews on the streets where, quite frankly, at some point, I was concerned for my own safety, and so were other people, because I was challenging the government. And so what it outlines for the reader is the evidence in the case. It outlines and shows the political maneuvering with the prosecutor and what he did. It reveals with the withheld evidence and what was withheld and how it was withheld. And then page by page, as you keep reading, you uncover more evidence that never got to trial. And you become more infuriated as you're reading the book, because as a reader, you can't believe that that's the way the system really is. And so it will open your eyes as to the power that the government has, and how important it is for one individual such as myself to stand up to the government and to, mind you, it's going to show the criticism that I was up against. It's going to show the fierce opposition and the extent to which the government would, take in their efforts to stymie my efforts in getting the truth out. But it will demonstrate through reaching out. In like chapter 13, I talk about 24 hours in cyberspace. And this was a worldwide event that happened in 1996, where I was one of the first people to bring this case to the internet and show that, that Joe Odell deserved a voice. And I became involved in a project where 150 of us were spotlighted around the world in an internet focus, showing how the internet was used back in 1996 to give people a voice. Which, this reached the front page of the New York Times, and it was just, a very innovative way to express people to the world. And that was not done back at that time. So I take the reader also to death row. I take them through my own fears coming from the background, the privileged background of being in Princeton and being married to a surgeon and living in a mansion, stepping into death row and what it's like having the cell, doors slammed shut behind you and being amongst prisoners and being a prisoner. You're in your own environment where you're horrified by what you're seeing as they're trying to execute a person that you believe is innocent. So it's a step-by-step, journey that I am not afraid to share my emotions, my strength, my challenges, along the way, much as I do in Italy, where I show oh my gosh, the beautiful compassion and the solidarity and the love that came from the people of Italy. And I think my book demonstrates, the difference between the United States and the apathy that happened in our country, and how media is so influenced by people with power that you go to another country and you give them the facts of the case and what have you, and you have an entire country and a parliament, and 95% of the people in Italy knew this story and knew Joe O'Dell and knew what this mission was. And 5 million people stayed up that night to find out, are they executing an innocent man, or are we going to get justice? I mean, those are the things that I think that people need to see. One person can make a difference in the world. And if my story can inspire people to make a difference in the world and to stay authentic, and no matter what, do not waver, step over those obstacles and, keep going and never give up. I hope that I can give people those tools so that they can then, live an inspiring life according to their own authenticity.
So inspiring. What is your long-term mission, Lori?
Well, my mission is to, effectuate change in the criminal justice system. To hold prosecutors accountable for misconduct, and to, try to bring back truth and integrity in a system that sometimes, honestly, those things get lost. My secondary goal is to inspire other people, and particularly women, to stay true to who they are, to be able to open up the obstacles that stand in their way, to be authentic to who they are, who they themselves are, and not to let outside influence or anything, be an obstacle to you living the life that you were meant to live. And so I will be educating people on how to use strategy-based performance methods that I used both in my career as an attorney and as a CPA. But in this story, you'll see I was very strategic in how I had to do things, to the point that I was going to marry someone to try to change, the death penalty rules in the United States. That's pretty much out there. But that's what you do when you believe in something. So my tools that I will offer the reader and the viewers and in my speaking engagements will be based upon, strategy-based methods that will enhance people's capabilities and open up their eyes as to how they're able to achieve their goal, and not just do it blindly, but be effective and efficient in what they're doing, which is basically what I do when I teach a city. That I consult a city on operations, and largely what I do is help the effectiveness and efficiency and people in management to be able to achieve their goals with the highest efficiency and effectiveness. So I wish to educate the law students and the investigators and the media and the general public, on the criminal justice system, and then as a secondary tool and equally as important on how it's important to stay attuned to yourself and to not waver in order to, reach your maximum potential in life.
It's so powerful, Lori. Now, I know that it's possible for our listeners to access the first chapter of your book. Would you like to tell them where they can find it?
Yes. The first chapter of my book will be on my website. I have dedicated, Marbeth, as you know, a website completely to this case, where I'm sharing interactively some photographs, and some you have to buy the book for. They're only in the book, but there are some photographs as a teaser, and videos internationally, and international media. This case was covered widely and of international attention and interest some time ago. So I share with everybody as much as information as I can on my website, which is www.loriestjohn.com, LORISTJOHN.com. And on that site, in the next couple of days, you will be able to click on in the middle of that page and get my first chapter, for free, in the hope that you will love it. And you will become hooked and not just want to put it down, but really, really learn, through my journey, how this can change your life. And I want to change, a lot of people's lives and inspire them to be all that they can be. I also have a Facebook page, www.facebook.com/Lori St. John author. And I give tips, every Saturday. I share stories of inspiration and what have you, to really educate and invite the people into my life and to share. And at that point, I also will be engaging and offering speaking engagements and consulting arrangements with people to help educate businesses and individuals on how to do the same type of thing that I did in my life, how they can accomplish that in their own.
I'll tell you, you've really have such an amazing story there. So what was it like when you met the Pope?
Oh boy. Well, when I arrived in Italy, that we had an Air Force plane that brought us to Italy, and I had met previously with the assistant to the Secretary of State, Monsignor Caccia, who was an amazing man, and Sister Helen Prejean had joined me at that point, and I'll give you like a little preview of one like area of the book. It was amazing. We rushed, quite frankly, to the meeting when he heard we were coming. He set up a private meeting for myself and Helen Prejean. And when we were, rushed through the corridors and finally got into this room, I was seated in a chair so tall and so high with red velvet that my feet were dangling from the edge. And I thought I was like Alice in Wonderland, like almost in a dream. And boy, that dream became reality when he walked through the doors. And, as frail as he was, he had the strength of anyone I can't imagine. His strength and his presence was so amazing and so touching that I couldn't believe. It was very surreal. So when he blessed me and he held my hand, I couldn't actually believe it, Marbeth, that I asked him to do it again. Could you do that again? I asked him. Because I think that it was like so shocking that I couldn't believe I was there. And, they were flashing pictures of us and everything. And Helen and I didn't even know that they were taking pictures. I mean, it was just quite extraordinary. And of course, I received a phone call from Mother Teresa as well. And that too was quite extraordinary. She was on her deathbed, and it was in her, the days before her own passing. And she did invite me to Calcutta to stay with her. And that too was pretty surreal. And, I was so used to talking about the case that when she got on the phone, I started rambling about the facts of the case. And she had such strength and such presence that, she said, hushed me. And had me listen to her, and boy, I did. And those are two moments that I cherish, very dearly, and will the rest of my life. Such a unique opportunity to meet, or talk to extraordinary people.
And Sister Helen, so was she with you when Joseph Odell was executed?
Sister Helen Prejean was brought into this case to help me bring national attention. I thought at some point I needed national attention because the prosecutor was fighting so hard against me. So I brought her in to do press conferences, and she did end up going to the death house, and I asked her to accompany me to Italy On my 10-day tour in Italy, I was alone, and I met with the president of Italy and the president of the Senate, and their aides and the foreign affairs prime minister. And I had a tour all over Italy and was on wonderful talk shows and what have you. And so she did go to the death house. And so my book, The Corruption of Innocence, does share in great detail, scenes from the death house with me in there, with Sister Helen there, her journey with me, to get my passport to go to Italy because we had no idea what was going on. And so we became Thelma and Louise. So we are now, to this very day, affectionately call each other Thelma and Louise and share a very, very deep relationship because of what we shared.
So profound. And I bet you had no idea that your life was going to take such an amazing twist. Here you were married to a surgeon back in New Jersey, and here you are today, the spokeswoman for justice and truth in our legal system.
Marbeth, you're right about that. And I think if I could just highlight one thing for the listener. We don't know where our life is going to take us at times. And if we just let go of what we think it should be or care about anyone's opinions, I had absolutely no idea that I was going on a ride of my life. No idea whatsoever. Had I known what I was going to face and what was going to happen, I probably would have run. But I didn't know. And that was the beauty of it. I'm glad I didn't know. But what I did know, more than once during this journey, I knew that there was something I don't know what it was, but there was just something outside of myself that was guiding me. And more than once you will read in The Corruption of Innocence how I say, I don't know what it is or who you are, but use me as a tool. I'm here for you. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm fighting and I'm exhausted and I don't know if I could do this much more, but the moment I become exhausted, I feel this surreal presence, and I couldn't have explained what it is, but it's something that just got me on my feet again and took me on the same path to continue fighting. And that's when you know that you've reached your mission and your purpose in life. And when you have reached that, it is the most beautiful, the most amazing thing that you could accomplish in your life. And that's what I want for everyone in life.
Wow, bravo. You're definitely preaching to the choir. And, I think it's just so amazing now that you have documented your story. When you wrote the book, were you just amazed at everything that you had actually done?
Yes. We had talked about that at some point because it was funny. I was writing the story and, sometimes I would look at the page and I'd be like, oh my God, I did that. I couldn't actually believe, on hindsight, because you become so immersed in what you're doing that I wasn't paying attention to the media or anything other than I was on a mission for truth. And I was not going to let anything stand in my way, nothing. And more than once, I read the story as if I was the reader for the first time. And I, being the author, I was like, oh, really? I did that? I forgot about that. Because I had done so much. You'll read in the story, I don't even know where I got the energy. Thank God that it was 15 years ago, because today I wouldn't have that kind of energy. It was just pretty crazy, and wonderful all at the same time. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. And I'm blessed to have been chosen to do the work.
And the fact that you documented everything, so many people who did not have the type of background that you have as the CPA to start with, and then developing the legal background, would not have known to keep all of the files that you did.
Marbeth, I actually didn't know to do that myself. I wasn't purposely thinking, oh, I'm going to, write all this down because I'm going to write a book about that. That was the last thing in my mind. I really don't know why I did that, but I thank God that I did. And, I had everything documented. And I mean, I think you might have seen, if not, I'll show you, but I mean, I have a second bedroom full of files of this case, and thank goodness that I kept it all because it has, in fact, allowed me to share exhibits with the audience, share the jailhouse snitch's confession that he lied. Show people things that they would never see before. And so it allows me to share these documents with people and share my story almost verbatim as it happened. I wasn't making it up or, gee, I forgot about that day, so let me fill that in. It pretty much shows you from month to month, for 4 years, what happened, based upon exactly what happened.
Lori, how can everybody order your book?
Oh, my book will be available for pre-order on Amazon.com. The publication date is June 28th. So you can pre-order before then on Amazon.com and also on my website, www.loristjohn.com, and barnesandnoble.com as well. It will be available in hardcover and paperback, and I'll offer ebook versions for those that so choose to read that way. So there'll be a variety of ways to get my book, and I can't wait to share with you all. Thank you.
And that is The Corruption of Innocence. Fabulous. I can't wait to get my copy, Lori, I'll tell you.
Well, thank you, Marbeth.